We're live. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody on LinkedIn Live. And lovely to see everybody. 9:30, bright and breezy. All is well. Charlotte, welcome.
Thank you.
Are you okay?
I am okay, thank you.
And very, very warm welcome to Fiona. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, ladies. Thank you very much for inviting me again. It's an absolute pleasure. I always enjoy coming on. It's always lively.
We certainly enjoy it. I know that I will have learned in the next 45 minutes. I know I'm going to learn. So welcome to everybody. Welcome to our Be Career Confident LinkedIn Live. This is a session that we do every month, although next month we're on holiday, so we won't be here in July. Yay! For those of you who haven't joined us before, this was born out of the pandemic, where Charlotte and I came together to offer careers guidance and career support to people that were struggling, working from home, looking for new roles, and also for businesses trying to employ people. And we looked at everything about supporting people with their CVs, to how to look at the job market, and then we just evolved it into labour market information and what was happening and helping everybody within the careers process. And we took from that first year the things that really were important to people, and then we've consolidated those into a monthly event. And today is all about how we look at equality, diversity and inclusion in a recruitment process, and then also when you've got those teams in place, how you develop those teams. The reason we invited Fiona on is Fiona has a wealth of experience within the field of building successful teams through lots of different techniques. So Fiona, let me come to you for you to do your little intro and tell our viewers who you are and what you've done.
Okay, my name is Fiona Campbell. I was working in the area of sales for 25 years, and that was my sort of previous career. But since 2000, I have been working in training and coaching for helping people develop leadership skills, but leadership skills around communication. It's all around behavior and communication. I am NLP trained, neuro-linguistic programming, and I do NLP training for companies and for business individuals. So it's really about helping people understand that people are people. No matter where you go. I've actually worked in many places in the world, worked internationally, still do a lot of my work online internationally, but it's all about working with people. So it's behind the mask of how people are presenting and understanding people are just human beings.
Perfect. And that's why we invited Fiona, because Charlotte and I are obviously recruiting all the time, working with people within their careers, and equality, diversity and inclusion is talked about a lot. And we wanted to be able to give our thoughts and our guidance on how that affects the recruitment process, but from a very human being point of view. This is not it ends up sometimes feeling a bit more like a process and a legality and what you should do. And I have oh God, I feel like I'm already about to go on a bit of a rant. We're only 4 minutes in. Not planned, but so I understand that we need to measure. I understand that to measure, we understand where we are in processes. But I've always had a problem with the percentage of it should be this on a board. And I'm female, and I felt very uncomfortable about so many percentage of women should be on boards. Because for me, it was always about, well, they should only be there if it's the right person for the job. And that's been my whole approach throughout my career. But I have learned that actually, if you don't measure something, then things can go backwards. But fundamentally, everything within business and recruitment and training and people all comes down to behaviours, doesn't it? It's about people and human beings. So if we start this process and start to look about equality, diversity and inclusion, Charlotte, what's your fundamental, this is the approach, this is what you take from it?
Well, I am of the same to you. I think, as with anything, it can't just be a tick box exercise. It has to be a moral code or a behavioural code that people use and use for positive. And hopefully throughout the course of this conversation this morning, we'll highlight some of those positives. And there are pitfalls when it's not adhered to correctly, but the benefits and the positives are huge. And that's not just how we behave with clients or how we behave, with our colleagues. It's how we attract new candidates. It's how we retain people. It's how we really set an example of who we are as a business and who we are as individuals, and what our expectations are of ourselves, but also those around us. I'm very much of the human ticking boxes. We've seen it so many times recently of processes where people have to go through different application procedures, all sorts. We are people. We are all individuals, and to understand how much care and courtesy needs to be used with that. I worked for a woman for many years, and her strapline was treat people like porcelain. And it was so true. They might appear really hard and solid and everything, but actually so fragile, and being delicate and treating them with care. But I think it starts. So this, and I'm super excited about this. I always am. So I actually do a fair amount of training around equality, diversity, and inclusion, and from a coaching point of view, from a training point, but also from a recruitment and retention point. And for me, it starts from the get-go. So if we start talking about kind of this process, and the topic for today is not just the terms equality, diversity, inclusion, but how we incorporate them in the recruitment and kind of long-term team building. Mm-hmm. So Ruth, I'm going to bat that back to you, and you, Fiona. How do we, from the beginning of the recruitment process, when we're looking at who we need in a business, and that, whether you call it identifying the need, whether you talk about, staff review, whatever it is, when we're first looking to bring people into the business, how can we incorporate that inclusion and that diversity and that equality bit?
Well, for me, one of the things is get very clear on the skills that you're looking for. Get really super clear of what exactly you're looking for skills-wise. And then try and look past your own assumptions, your own biases, your own expectations of what you believe someone can and can't do. And be very comfortable about asking questions. Asking questions, really getting to know people. Because, for example, I'm in my very late 60s. And for a lot of people, this is all retirement age. I'm only warming up. I'm about to go into my next career, which I'll tell you about some other time. But it's people that are older have got an awful lot to give. People that are younger have got a huge amount to give. So it's really putting ourselves in almost like a know-nothing state. To be able to say, okay, this is the skills, this person, we're seeing it in the CV here, but try and get past your initial, they're too old, or they're too young, or they're too this, or they're too the next thing. And maybe go past that and really start to suspend these assumptions and really start to get to know the person with very relevant questions regarding how they apply their skills.
Yeah, I would take it a step further back. I'm also going to say there's a question and some great comments. So I'm going to come back to that as well. Just from your question, Charlotte, of starting off from the get-go, I think when you're looking at that what you're going to recruit for, before you even start thinking about the questions and you're looking at CVs, it's about internally looking at your business and stopping and thinking, right, what we've always had, do we still need? And what are we missing within our business? And stopping and just reflecting, has our culture changed? Are we different? Do we need to be different? I shared with you an example of somebody that I'm working with at the moment. They're a global organisation. They're starting a very, very new division, and they have said they need 3 people within this division. It's blue sky thinking. It's future innovations, and the VP said to me, she said, I'm looking for 3 people. I want 1 person based in the US, 1 person based in the UK, and 1 person based in Asia. Okay. Tell me a bit more about why. And she said, and I thought this was really, really interesting. She said, because I want to understand globally what people are doing, and I want to bring their cultures into our organisation. So she was being very specific, and actually we think we're going to have to modify it, because the senior person that we thought was going to be based in the US, we actually think we found them in the UK. So we're going to modify it a little bit, and that's changing a little bit. But the communication's open. We know where they are. They haven't gone cold. So the culture of, I'm seeing the culture of that business. I think it very much is, and you can do that as an SME. I look at it in our business. Okay, how have we changed? What's right for us now? We now all work from home. We didn't before. So that's changed the culture of our business. Well, that actually means that we can look at people further afield. And what skill set do we need? As recruiters, how has recruitment changed? So I think the first bit is stop. Yeah. Stop and look at your business and think, what have we been doing? Where are the gaps? What would we like to happen? And what value could we have from different types of people, and how could we include those within our business to be better? Can I also, I'm going to bring this question in, because Stephen and Pete have been putting some great comments in. So this is Pete's. Is there a danger that over-processing recruitment actually excludes some minorities because of subconscious bias when setting it up? Charlotte.
So I want to come on to that, and I will answer it, but I just want to say one thing on the last bit, because I think it'd be really remiss not to say it. When you're saying identify the need, think about what's working well, what could be brought in, to be helpful. I think it's really important that if you are, as a business, looking at the team you've got and saying, actually, we're all like this, it'd be really good if we had somebody who thought like that or came from a different background, or, brilliant, you're trying and you're doing your best to embrace diversity, inclusion, and equality. But we have to make sure that we've got the support to be able to help that person when they come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going to be different.
Yeah.
Bringing someone in who is, high, if we're talking DISC, high D or high I, when we're a team of S's and C's is going to be challenging. Bringing somebody in who, I love the expression, neurodiversity, that person is going to need a different support than potentially others. So we must make sure, yes, it's wonderful to say, right, let's be brilliant, but we just must, that's just a further stop from me, just to say, right, have we got stuff in place? Because otherwise it's not going to be fair on that person. Then everybody in the wider team then becomes scared of it, of going, oh, we've tried to embrace diversity, it hasn't worked.
Yeah, you can imagine it. You can imagine it, can't you? Somebody makes it very clear, oh, we could include these people and this skill set and all of this, and gets very carried away and doesn't think about the support side of things. Yeah, great point, Charlotte.
So, Pete, yes, there is. And I had a really interesting conversation with someone quite recently, actually, talking about the recruitment process and where we were going to go to market with a very new, very exciting role. It is an opportunity. It's a newly created role in a newly created division. And like Ruth, it's an opportunity to bring in some wider input, wider knowledge, wider cultural background, everything. They're very traditional Northamptonshire firm who potentially don't look very far and haven't. And the conversation was, right, okay, we're going to go to market, we're going to advertise this. And it came up in the conversation, it's like, well, hang on, all of the places we're talking about are online. How do we get onto those people who aren't online? who don't use the job boards. So I think in answer to Pete's question, it's not, I'm going to widen it up, not necessarily they're about minorities, but what about the people who aren't, accessing what some may consider as the norm?
Because there's a lot of people now that want to do digital detoxes, aren't there?
Yeah. So
and I feel that it's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we make sure they're included? But Pete, yeah, absolutely. Again, am I offended sometimes when someone says, "Oh, right, well, we need to make sure that we're putting adverts in different pockets and different bits in the community, particularly where I am"? No, I'm not offended, but it feels very formulaic, and actually, it should go back to being accessible to everybody. So we need to make sure that the same, from an equality point of view, that everybody, regardless of age or stage or anything that potentially puts them in a different box, they have the access. So yeah, really, Fiona, your comment, I'd love to, you come from a background of working with different people from all around the world.
Yeah.
And successfully creating those little melting pots and training them.
Yeah.
What is your insight in that kind of unconscious bias bit that, how do we as individuals work on our initial response to somebody if they're from a different culture?
Educating yourself, getting to know about different cultures, getting to understand different cultures, asking people about their cultures. Because what tends to happen a lot, especially in some of the expat places I've worked, in the Middle East, all certain cultures tend to sort of stay together, but the really successful companies were the ones that embraced all cultures. I mean, I remember being at it was an event, and there was 128 different nationalities there. So it's asking people, getting to know people's stories, getting to know about them, getting to know a little bit about their lifestyle, what's important to them. I think, and really building that rapport as people. Like, for example, when we were in India, my husband got to know, he had a driver, but he got to know by talking to his driver that his driver actually had a 2-hour journey before he could pick up the car in the morning to pick him up at 7 o'clock. And his other managers had never found that out. So it's just being curious and getting to know and talk to people about their lifestyle, about themselves, about things, and maybe asking, what do I need to know about your culture? What do I need to know about how I could offend you or not offend you? What fits within your culture, and just taking that information, and it's not fitting into every single different ways people do, but it's having this understanding so that you can then educate other people in the team about that and get people talking about themselves a lot.
Interesting. That I would actually say that needs to be carried on with people who you think are similar to you as well, because we presume, don't we? Somebody lives in a village in Northamptonshire. It would be so easy to presume, oh, they must be quite similar to me, but they're not.
Well, I know with my work with neuro-linguistic programming, we all create our own experience of the world. And when we all create our own experience, so it means even people that, as you say, you think are like you, they're not like you. Everyone's got their own problems, everyone's got their own challenges. And what I've found is the majority of people, the vast majority of people, have got no idea of the impact their behavior is having on others.
Yeah.
They're not, most people are not doing this consciously. So they can be maybe offending someone, and they've no idea they've offended, and maybe get very embarrassed if that's when that's actually pointed out to them. So we tend to live in our own little worlds, assuming, as you say, people are either like us or different to us, but it's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah,
I've just popped that up from Maxine. I loved that. Polite curiosity.
Yes.
So there's lots of things coming in here, and I just want to make sure that we answer some questions and some comments as well. Stephen has commented on a lot of things. I'm going to pick up on this. One of the biggest blockers to diverse hire applying for roles is the overstatement of qualifications. Now, I think I've seen this in two ways, and I agree with this. I agree with it because it's been driven by the US. So the US, it's always been degree, MBA, masters. I think, and anybody that knows this organization more than me, but Amazon, I don't think you can be a senior manager within Amazon if you don't have a master's. I think this then blocks, this blocker comes into two ways. It comes into the people that are creative and have got that creative mindset and learn differently. It also blocks, as you've just said, Fiona, the older generation, because a lot of older generation didn't do the degree, did they?
Me.
No, me neither. I mean, I know I'm in my final bit now, but I'll probably graduate at 47, hopefully, dissertation coming in and all that. But that's as a choice. But I really agree with that, and I think, again, if we take it back to the start of what do you actually need, why do you need that, and again, it's about looking at your culture. I think it's harder with larger organizations. I do understand that. So I thought that was, do you agree with that as well?
Well, I got into Xerox. I was hired for to work with Xerox when I was actually in the Middle East. And you don't get into Xerox without a degree. I did. You normally don't get into Xerox initially without a lot of experience. After the age of about 21, 22, that's when they take people in. I was in my 30s. So it's looking at sometimes, and especially now where there's a lot of youngsters starting to think, do we need to go through the whole university scenario? It's looking to see who's capable of doing the job and who's got the common sense to do the job, who's got the experience. And sometimes it's all to do with, I mean, this is a huge subject. We can't even begin.
I know. And I'm going to chuck something, because there's so much coming in, I'm going to chuck something else at you because it's aimed at you, Fiona. So what are the common assumptions that you see people need to overcome?
Different cultures. And the common ones I'm seeing a lot of just now are age. So a lot of older people in business assuming they can't be managed by younger people.
Oh, that's interesting.
See a lot.
Older people are assuming they can't be managed by younger people.
They don't want to be managed by younger people.
They don't want to be managed. Okay.
But they think they can't be managed because what do they know?
Is that still happening?
Yeah, that's still happening.
Wow,
that's still happening because we do a lot. We see that a lot in leadership training. So there's people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and it goes as low as the 40s, feeling quite uncomfortable at someone in their 20s. Especially
that's interesting. Yeah. So I find that really interesting because I'm a big fan of reverse mentoring.
Yes.
I've said I'm 47. There's stuff that I just don't know. Yeah. And I love to learn from people that are younger than me. Now, whether that was when we had our apprentices, I mean, at that point, going back a few years, it was talk to me about what's going on with social media. Still not on TikTok. But understand how people engage, because it's like, right, how are you thinking? What? And I remember the trend of, or the parents were on Facebook, so the children went onto Instagram. So then the parents went onto Instagram just to follow, to keep an eye on them. And then they found different ways. But my friends' children now are sort of between 14 and 19. And I love it. I love to be able to think, but is that because I'm not managing them and I'm not planning, or they're not managing me? Maybe it's a different mindset.
Well, no, I think it's a mindset, again, back to this good old word, curiosity. When you have curiosity, you tend to get interested in what people do as people, and you tend to keep up with things, especially in the workplace today. There's so many different things happening, and we're in constant learning. Now, for people who are not on constant learning, who don't think it's important, who maybe believe they've reached a stage where I don't need to learn anymore, that's becoming outdated. So it's almost as if it's the flexible mindset is what's needed to keep up, whether it's with culture, whether it's with age, whether it's with the technology you're using, whether it's whatever, compared to the people that are very stuck. Right? For example, in working in some places, I was out in the Middle East for 13 years. Now, when you think about that culture there, everyone has to have got there. Hardly anyone was born. Well, that's changed now, but when I first went out, hardly anyone was born in the UAE. I mean, the last 20 years has been a huge difference. Okay. But every single person had got there, so there was an adventure spirit that was there that created this acceptance of lots of different cultures, lots of different ways of doing things, and an acceptance of a very young, dynamic workforce. Whereas when I came back to Britain, I was quite surprised at how I thought there'd be quite similarity coming back. And I didn't find the similarity. I found it much easier to train out there than here to start with, because people were not moving at the same speed of acceptance of differences.
Interesting.
But the thing is that there's a base level in an expat community that of a certain type of person that is willing to uproot themselves, uproot their family, uproot away from what they've grown up with to start something. So you're working from a different benchmark.
That agility piece.
I really like this, that curiosity bit and like that mindset. So many of you know, as we see and we giggle about it, that I have a young family, and I'm there hearing what the children are being taught at school about growth mindset, and every parent who has primary school and secondary school will be so sick of that expression, but that growth, they're taught growth mindset. Be open, be willing to embrace something different, be willing to embrace something that's not the norm for you. You know, gender fluidity, you know, on their forms now, and they've, you know, have to say where, you know, where they bias towards or where they identify with. Sorry, excuse me, using the wrong expression there, but which is alien to many people who haven't had that. So here you are, you've got a bunch of people coming up, and the generations coming up who are taught to be flexible, taught to be open-minded, taught to embrace difference and things. And then we've got the generation here who are trying to go, oh, well, we need to learn to embrace this. But there's a communication error there, isn't there? There's a communication, and we talked a bit about it the other day, is actually we as the generation who potentially the things are new, and the ones who are bringing that new thing need to work together to communicate how we move forward, don't we? And it's not one dominating the other. And I think there's a bit of a concern, isn't there, that there's suddenly everybody has to adhere to being really, really flexible. It's like actually be gentle with the people who don't quite understand this, or who haven't grown up with this growth mindset. And I think when we talk about that mentoring, one of the things that I have seen that's been really, really helpful is the generation saying, like you said at the beginning, Fiona, and it's all the same stuff, is saying how I want to be communicated with. How do I want people to treat me? How do I want to... But it has to work both ways. So it has to be allowed. And the other generation who have never done that need to learn to feel confident to say, actually, is it okay if you treat me like this? Because at the moment, the dialogue is weighted quite heavily one way. And I think there's lots of people, like you said, the older generation feeling concerned about or not wanting to be managed by a younger generation. Actually, that should be an opportunity for learning for everybody.
Yeah.
Learning for learning by osmosis, being around someone who's done your trade that you're moving into for 40 years should be so exciting for a youngster. And likewise, for an old person, someone coming up, to learn a new behaviour, learn a new culture, learn what's happening, learn where the world's moving to, should be exciting.
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of that mentoring of different generations and different mindsets, but it has to be treated very gently, very carefully. And I think that's my little bit about that reverse mentoring program. Yeah, so important.
We've talked about identifying what your business is, where it is at, and where you then start that process. So when you go to market and when you're going out and doing interviews or even advertising, what are the top tips in there do you think that we need to consider in that advertising, recruitment advertising, and then receiving those CVs and then interviewing those people to bring in to ensure that equality and inclusion piece? And obviously I think the diversity then comes in naturally if you get that right, in my opinion. I might be wrong.
So I'd say my comment is make sure, and to go back to a little bit what I said earlier, make sure it's going to places where everybody can access the opportunity. Yeah. So recruiters, it's not just a job board, it's going to universities, it's going to job centres, it's sticking something up in a post office, it's being and trying to open up different routes to market to be accessible. I think it's encouraging, we talked about that, the degree bit, being flexible, being open-minded, something similar, or a recognised qualification in this field. That could be an HND, that could be a BTEC, that could be a T-level now. There's so many different qualifications that it could be. But I think as anyone who has the responsibility to hire needs to learn to manage themselves in that hiring process, to learn their pitfalls with unconscious bias. When you look at a CV, O-levels, oh right, okay, or that person's worked for council, they might be wired like this, or that person's worked in small manufacturing, they might be like this. We have to learn to take out our default presumption, and that's hard. But as our jobs, we always have to work on our CPD, and this is something we always have to be reminded about, don't we?
It is that circle again, isn't it? You're going back, checking in. Where are we as a business? What do we need? What's our recruitment process? Where are we trying to get people? Have we got into this whole rut of, LinkedIn, just going to LinkedIn to advertise? We've forgotten about the other communities and the people that we need to speak to. It's going back in that circle, isn't it? Check in. Is this still the thing that we need to be doing? And then when we do it again, check in again. It's that circle, Charlotte.
It's up there. Can you see it all there?
Charlotte always talks in circles. Always talks in circles.
You have a wand, I think, with it like a little flaming, sparkling wand to sit here.
Do all over. You said something also that stuck with me. It's about your moral compass and what you need as a business and as a person, and seeing people as human beings. And I think that is key in this equality piece and inclusion piece. I would absolutely agree. It's how we move it, isn't it, over there? How we move it into that place of from one position to another position. Maxine's shared something very interesting. So she says, we've been trying to search for something, but a Scandinavian business have tables where people from diverse backgrounds, Buddhist monks, people of colour, the other religions, sit down with them and chat about each other's differences. Great idea. It is a great idea. If you brought that into the business of, like you said at the beginning, Fiona, about that curiosity. Being curious to learn about other people. And I do think as a society, we don't stop. I do think we're more encouraged to keep on learning now, everybody. And there's a genuine want and desire to learn. And that's got to surely come in to offset this piece about the qualifications.
I think also with what Charlotte was saying, and also what you're saying, Ruth, here, one thing we've not touched is shared values.
Yeah.
Because when you actually get into shared values, that gets rid of a lot of the external bias that you may have, you know, that maybe just from what you're seeing. But when you actually understand that someone has the same value as you, no matter where they've come from, what age they are, there's values of maybe a good work ethic, a really, you know, honesty, really helping support each other. There's all these different values that come in. But with curiosity, just to mention, I mean, out in the Middle East, I was there just before the pandemic. I was still traveling out there until the pandemic. And what was absolutely promoted a lot was the UAE space team. And their mission, the actual mission controls 80% women scientists. And
this blew us away.
Yeah, I mean, there was they're really proud of the fact that it was all these women scientists, and it was a 29-year-old woman who was put in charge of the project.
So how did they get to that point?
Through leadership for it was equality leadership.
Wow, I mean,
and that was from when, because when I first went out there in the 80s, I was there when they brought in their first college. There was no college there, but it was only just high school and everyone left the country. Then they brought in college, then they brought in university. And right from the 70s, it's been equality for learning, for education. And there's so many, most of their companies are very, very equal in the male and female split for leadership at CEO level.
I tell you what I'm hearing as well from all that you're sharing is when it works really, really well is when it started quite a while ago.
Yes.
And it's consistent. This equality, diversity and inclusion piece is not a one hit. It isn't also just about the recruitment process. It has to be embedded into the culture, as you've said, of the business, and that we are consistently going to keep on doing this for the value of the business and for the human beings that work within our businesses. There has to be this culture that consistently evolves and grows. And if we stop doing something, there needs to be a real reason for stop doing it. I've heard a lot of organisations currently that are stopping it, that haven't done their graduate programmes for like 5 years, and now they're struggling to recruit. I still can't get my head around it. Why would you stop doing a graduate programme when you know you're going to be in business in 20 years' time, and you know that the graduates, you're going to need talent coming into your business? Why have you not created that ongoing relationship with a university so that you're giving back, giving them experience, and then you're getting talent? So, you know, that space program didn't just happen like that.
Oh no, that was planned way back in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlotte, I'm bringing up yours as well, because obviously
I love that.
We were watching the Jubilee, weren't we?
It was so interesting, some of those stats that came from the Jubilee. Wasn't it? Hey, no, I'd love to. You know, all the stats about the different troops, the different, you know, where they came from in the country, where they recruited from. And if you listen, you know, and this was the down chat between the big events. God, it was really interesting about that and embracing what wasn't necessarily considered the norm. So yeah, super exciting. Fiona, I'd really like you just to share the story about your name tape. It's been making me chuckle all week.
Okay. I was in the Middle East working with Xerox. I started there in 1982, and I used to have to do a lot of visits out to the military posts out in the deserts, and I was always signed in as Mr. Fiona Campbell. And I remember saying to them, "Why are you signing me as Mr. Fiona Campbell?" They said, "Because we have no facility to sign a woman in." And that was at that point of time, but they just called me Mr. Fiona Campbell. And I didn't take offence to that. I was actually an air traffic control assistant. I was the youngest air traffic control assistant in the UK. I was 17 and had to have my parents' written permission to do night shift. And when I went on the training there was 3 women and 600 guys at the Herndon College when I was training there for that. So it's interesting having grown up very much in lots of male-dominated areas, But the way, even then, to get back to the UAE, the lovely way they just got round it by just putting me as a Mr. And that was just, yes, that's okay. Come in, it's all right.
We've moved on since then, isn't that exciting? It gives us hope. I think that's the bit to take away. Is it really had me giggling, but so exciting that we are where we are now.
Yes.
I think it's easy. So Fiona, like you, I spent lots of time around the world growing up, different cultures and things, and embracing different cultures has always been part of something that I'm been taught to do, because it's exciting, because you get to learn, because you get to meet friends with different opinions, and it's how it is just ensuring everybody sees it as a positive and an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to get to know things that we wouldn't know otherwise.
Yes.
And I think that curiosity, Maxine, that's been the comment for me today, is about that curiosity.
And also acceptance of other people's view of the world that might not match your own, but absolutely accepting. They see the world that way, and let's see if we can find our commonalities. Because I saw Pete mention something earlier on about, yes, it's the commonalities that connect us rather than our differences. When we really connect with commonalities, that's when people feel close to you.
So sorry. Into a full, I've done it, I haven't done it, and I've just done it. Ruth just mortified.
No, I love it. No, because I love it, because it's look, you even see our logo, it's circles. It's always about continuous learning. And this is it, yeah. Sorry, so Charlotte, go on.
We're talking about embracing equality, diversity and inclusion. And as titles, they sound like things that mean difference, don't they? But actually, we're talking about finding the similarities in them and finding the common ground in them.
Yeah.
Because I live where I live, I look like I do, doesn't mean that I can't enjoy company with somebody from a different culture who lives in a similar way. And the similarity is the value. And I love that, Fiona, about the value. And, we're talking about this from a recruitment point of view. Let's find the shared value. Let's find the shared motivations. And the diversity will come naturally.
Yes.
Because not everybody, and the inclusion will come naturally because there's common ground already. And the equality will come because there's a mutual respect, because there are shared values. So actually, if we see them as a legal thing that we have to implement, we're forcing it. If we do it as something that we should be doing as a natural behaviour, to say, as a business, this is our ethos. We want people, like Ruth saying about the company with the blue sky, that all of that thing. They want these people who have common values and value and, this drive. That is so exciting. And they're not all going to live in a 30-mile radius from the office. So they're able to open that up, but that's going to create, yes, the diversity, yes, the inclusion, yes, the equality, because they're offering this opportunity, but it's going to work because of the fact that they've got that core already. So I love that, because I do feel that brings us back round to saying this is why they're important. But if you start at it from a behaviour, from a values, from a communication point, rather than a tick box, one's going to be successful and one's going to be trickier.
And if we take it down to actually how a business works, very successful businesses often have people, the core people driving that business and the people that are motivated to work well, they all have shared values. And it's the shared values, and as you said, the motivate, because it clicks into values, then motivation, and then you get this lovely human connection that people help each other, they look out for each other, they pull each other along, and it's a natural team building that comes. But if there's people violating these values in there, it collapses, or these people get pushed to the side. And then it can be, they can, start to come out with, I'm being discriminated against, but maybe it's, no matter who they were, if this is the values that are not
fitting. Values were broken.
Yes, because it's very hard to trust someone that breaks your values.
Yeah, absolutely. And your trust.
Yes.
Oh, I feel like there needs to be a follow-up session to this. As
It's
always,
a huge subject.
I just, yeah, there is.
barely scratched
much.
the surface. We will look at doing some training. I know Tally and I will be CWR will be doing some training around this. I think the three of us probably need to come back and have a follow-up discussion in due course, talking about this a little bit. I think it'd be really helpful to address the age.
Well, look at this is what Maxine says. We need a session of overcoming ageism from an older person's perspective, how not to discriminate against younger people.
Yes.
I think we've got quite a bit to go on.
Yeah. So it has been so brilliant, as always. Fiona, I could just sit and talk to you for hours and hours and hours. Your insight is so interesting. Your story is so fun. You set such an example, for all sorts of different reasons.
And we'll be warming up.
Exactly. And God Almighty. I mean, I'm so excited to hear what your next career is. This is amazing.
Yeah.
But we are going to have a month off next month, and we've decided to put July off because so many people are normally away. It gives us a moment just to breathe. We will be back, let me tell you the date, on the 4th of August, where we're going to be talking about exams and education. So this will be entirely focused around those who are at that point of change from an education point, whether leaving, having done GCSEs, having done A-levels, degrees. Really excited. Tracy, Clay, Ruth, Tally and Phil Salton will be on that panel. So apparently I have 2 months off. Don't tell Ruth.
Can I also say that I'm looking forward to September as well? I just want to say what we're doing in September because it's labour market review again.
Yeah.
And just because the world's going a bit nuts,
Yeah.
I have no idea what the labour market is going to be and the economy is going to be like in September. So September, first week of September, yeah. So we've got exam results and then
labour market. September's a good time to look at it too, because everybody's back, everybody's concentrating, everybody's delighted to have fobbed off grandchildren and children back into education, and we're all ready to concentrate on working hard again. So it's such a good time. It just leaves us to say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you so much.
Good chat, Fiona. Great to see
Thank
you.
you very much. Lovely to see you all again.
Yeah. Take care.
Great to
Bye.
see everybody.
Bye. Bye.